for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pete Wade. I've been with North Coast for 10 or 12 years. I've lost track. But today's demonstration is going to be a three-sided bowl along with some surface embellishing using a homemade car battery charger branding iron thingy, okay? It's for lack of a better technical term. So a three-sided bowl is, I would consider, a high-end beginner intermediate level project. There's one secret to doing it, and then it's just regular bowl turning. So if you can reasonably hack your way through making a bowl, you can do a three-sided bowl. And I think you'll agree that they have a kind of a coolness factor to them that non-wood turners, or even some wood turners that don't know how to do it, are kind of like, how did you do that? I'm sure a lot of you might think that you make a triangular piece of wood, but in fact, you are starting with a cube of wood. So, in order to do a three-sided bowl, you'll need a lathe, obviously. You'll need some sort of a cup center, so no point. You will need a scroll chuck of some sort, and then your basic bowl turning tools, bowl gouge, parting tool, scrapers, sandpaper, and whatnot. And then if you're going to be branding it, you'll need some sort of a wood burner, or preferably a branding iron. Okay, your piece of wood needs to be a true cube, equal on all sides, within a 1/16 of an inch. To set it up, all you need is your cup center. You don't need anything on the headstock except the existing hole, the Morse taper hole in your headstock. You want to choose two opposing corners. Any corner doesn't matter. You're going to have to deal with end grain and side grain no matter how you hold this. But the secret is, and this is the whole thing, is you will be grabbing it on two opposing corners, giving you sort of a diamond kind of shape. So it doesn't matter if it's this way, doesn't matter. So we will put one corner, again, opposing corners, right into our lathe, pinching it between centers. Now, if you look, geometry dictates that by holding it like this, the remaining corners will form two pairs of three corners. So you've got 1, 2, 3 in this plane, and 1, 2, 3 in this plane. We're interested in this plane, not this one. These are all going to get turned away. So if we look at our piece, this is what we're going to achieve. So you can see there's a lot of waste involved in this. But, again, pretty cool looking bowl when you're all done. Once you get it set up here, and you can see I've just lightly grabbed it so I can still spin it and it's not even turning the headstock. I want to check my alignment. I want to make sure that the three corners that we're going to save are reasonably running true. To do that, we're going to take our tool rest, kind of use it like an indicator, line it up with one corner, and then just spin our piece of wood. Which view are we on? Sort of, okay, we're on the top, okay. So you can see I'm maybe close to 1/8 of an inch off on my corners. Holding it pinched between the two center holes here is your best chance of alignment. I think the problem is this is not a true cup center like the one-way cup center, so it has an actual cutting edge there. This is the Powermatic one, and it's really just a hole, but I think it's kind of pushing me a little bit off center. But to get it lined up, we're just going to kind of shift it around a little bit. And if you know anything about lining up pieces of wood or pieces of metal, whatever you're working with, however much off it is, you want to move it half that distance to correct it. Just little movements until you get it lined up. Now, the reason I'm spending time doing this is because this will affect those 3 wings when we're all done. And the human eye can easily pick up a 1/16 of an inch deviation. Now, this is civilians, not us. Civilians, a regular person going to a craft show or an art show can see a 1/16 of an inch of misalignment or thickness that's different. A picture frame is a 1/16 of an inch low on one side. Us, who are accustomed to seeing these finer details, can probably see a 32nd of an inch. So on my finished piece, if I've got one wing right here that's a 32nd thicker or thinner than the other two, you guys are going to call me out on that. Now, machinists, on the other hand, can probably see down around 5,000, so there's nothing you can do with that. So, all right, so I've got this probably less than a 32nd now, as best I can tell. So we can go ahead and snug this up. Make sure we haven't moved it. Okay, I'm good with that. Okay, so we've got it pinched between centers, pretty snug. You're going to get some slipping because there's no teeth really holding this in, but we just keep tightening up that tailstock to get it held in place. Now, I follow Stuart Batty's push cut method of bowl turning, and doing that, you are working from the tailstock side up, which lends itself very much to a 3-sided bowl because it lessens the chance that you're going to get chipping on those critical 3 corners that you want to take. You're easing your way up to it. If you were to start at the corners and work your way down, there's a good chance of chipping out the corners, and if you chip out those corners, it kind of defeats the purpose of the nice sharp corners. All right. So I've got my tool rest set up at about a 40-degree angle. I've got my 40-40 grind bowl gouge. So just so everybody knows, 40-degree grind bevel cut, the wings are at a 40-degree, the cutting edge is a 40-degree. So following the piece of wood, pushing straight in, parallel to the bedways, is the push cut. And it will just nicely slice off that wood. The interrupted cut will be a little rough in the beginning, but once I get to solid wood, it makes for a beautiful finish. Not sand-free, but hopefully get us to the high 100s or even low 200s sandpaper, and we're good to go. All right? Okay. So, seal myself off here. Just when the lathe starts to shake, and then back it down just a scotch. I'll start up at the right side, or your left side corners, and we'll start to work those down. And hopefully with it spinning, if you still don't quite understand how we're doing this, you should be able to see the shadow of where those points are. Forgot my face shield here, guys. Why is nobody reminding me of the safety requirements? Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. So I'm going for a little bit more of a contemporary shape, an angled outside, no curve to it. All right, so my goal is to finish this angle cut just as I come to those corners. And you can see that tear out that I've got, but I've managed to save that corner, so we'll be okay. So now hopefully you can really start to see that shape and this cool kind of curve that it creates. Just the geometry of turning a cube. This is just how it works, okay? Oh, move this in a little closer. And I'm just trying to match up my tool rest to the angle that I've created. So just a simple cone shape. Like I said, that's more of a contemporary shape. Okay, so you can see I've still got some flats here. So I need to adjust my angle a little bit steeper I don't want to turn any more on the corners because I've cleaned up 100%, but I want to adjust this angle down a little bit. I don't need to do the whole way because the first, 2 inches or so is going to end up being waste. So I'm just going to adjust a little bit to clean that up. So this piece of wood is from Dow Lumber, and it said soft maple on it. But when I cut it the other day on my bandsaw into the cube, my bandsaw did not agree that it was soft maple. And I'm agreeing with that now. So I had to switch to not doing a push cut, but coming down, just so I could see that angle a little bit better.
So Pete, would you use 60 grit sandpaper right now?
Probably 80. But just up here in the interrupted area, just a big piece and just a That's better. It was kind of a little bulged. Okay. I think that's pretty good. Little bit of tear out here on the end grain, but one of the benefits of branding, it fixes everything. You won't ever see that. Okay, so that is, in a nutshell, turning the outside. Now, hopefully you can really see where that three-cornered, three-sided bowl comes in. So now, we can go ahead and get it ready to flip around in our chuck. Now, using dividers to mark off your where your tenon is going to be on a cone is a little difficult, so we're going to mark it by hand. Bless you. all of this first 2 inches is all waste wood, so we're going to go ahead and turn that off. Or not turn it off, but turn it down to a stem. And I'll explain why here in a bit. I just want to make sure that the diameter is small enough that I can get it through my chuck. Now we'll grab a skew and use the skew as it was truly intended for making a dovetail. Now, pro turners really emphasize this part of bowl turning, that the fit of your tenon is quite possibly the most critical part of roughing out a bowl blank. So just a side tip, if anybody is having difficulty when they make their tenon and they flip it around and they're turning out all of the waste wood inside. If you're having problems with knocking the bowl off center, or God forbid even launching the piece of wood, go back and look at how you're making your tenon. It's not so much the perfect angle of the dovetail as the undercut face. So it's almost like 2 dovetails. I've got the dovetail angle of the tenon itself, but then this face here is at a slight angle so that the largest most portion is sticking out proud. And what that does is it seats against the face of your jaws. And the action of squeezing down on the dovetail tenon, or straight tenon, whatever chuck you have, pulls it and pushes that edge right into the face of your chuck jaws. That's what gives you the stability to hold up against all this turning on the inside. Okay? So if you're having problems with that, look at how you're making your tenon. So we are good, aside from where I grabbed. Now I have to clean that up. I can't leave it like that, right, guys? There is definitely, right here is a hard spot. If all else fails, blame it on the wood, right? Okay, so your dovetail, and we'll look at a cross section. So let's just do a normal bowl. And I'm exaggerating all this so that we can see it. So this is your waste wood that will probably eventually turn into a foot of your bowl. And what you want to achieve there's your dovetail shape. Now, specifically right here, this face that we're creating has a slight undercut. And then your dovetail is your angled cut. Then when your chuck jaws come in, your chuck jaws will sit against just that rim, that edge that you've created. So hopefully you can see this little gap that I've shown down in the pointed area of your tenon. That's what you want to try to create. And what that does is, if you imagine doing all your turning on the inside of this bowl, you're putting a tremendous amount of force against one side of the bowl. That's hitting right here against your chuck jaws. And that's what supports that piece of wood from wobbling. Now, if you were to go the opposite way with that, so your point of contact was down here at the smaller diameter, the points of your chuck jaws, that you will physically be able to take that bowl and rock it inside your chuck, no matter how tight you've gotten it down. And that's what happens to a lot of beginners, is they're not thinking about that face angle, and they come in as they're turning, they create an angle where it only contacts here, and then immediately the bowl starts wobbling when they start turning the inside out. So, good? Probably a 1/4 inch. It's actually less than a 1/4. You certainly can. So again, the strength really doesn't come from the diameter of the tenon itself. It's the face. That's where the support comes from. So for this size bowl, I think that's probably an appropriate size. You could certainly make it bigger. I mean, you got the wood. We just wasted 1.5 inches, so I could have made it longer. You also have to be careful that you don't make it too long. You don't want to bottom out in here where your screws are. That's going to be the worst case scenario. So what's that about? That's probably about 3/8 or so. So I could have made it a little bit longer. Now you've jinxed me, and that's going to be my mistake. I'm going to launch this thing. Okay, good? All right. Okay. So now you hopefully can see why I've left this on here, because on any bowl that I make, I always leave my center mark. Most of the time, I'm not completely finishing a bowl all in one shot, especially if I'm going to be branding it. I'm going to turn some of the inside out, I'm going to go brand it, and then I'm going to bring it back. And if for some reason I got to get it back in this way, it gives me something that I can line back up off of to get it running true. So this is the last thing I will take off on any of my bowls, okay? But it is nerve-wracking getting everything figured out, and no matter how well you plan for mistakes and things like that, you're gonna screw something up. As a matter of fact, I brought a second cube as a just in case. So now, again, no point in my center. I can bring this up. It's not the same size as the headstock, but it's close enough. And I can make sure that my points are still lined up. We're good, yeah. Okay. And just give a little bit of support with the tailstock. Now, if you go on YouTube and look up three-sided bowls, as with anything in wood turning, there is 20 different ways to do this. Going back to your question in the beginning, there's a phenomenal wood turner, I think from Scotland, Robert Woodhead, I think his name is, but he does a three-sided bowl, and he just uses a handsaw and cuts all this off. Just, to me, that would take longer than turning it all off, but hey, whatever works for you. But there's people that take all that off on the bench before they even get started. Everybody's got a different way. So now we are essentially just at basic bowl turning. Using the push cut, I'm just going to push in and create a series of V's just to work this surface down. Just kind of stepping that wood down. And as I get closer and closer to the rim, I don't want to go too close to the rim for risk of getting some tear out. You can see there. So the risk is if I get too close, all of that could happen here and destroy my edge, kind of what I did there on that corner. So a trick that I've learned from good old Norm Abram. When he makes, on the few episodes of New Yankee Workshop that he did some turning, he did a technique where when he's making table legs, and I apologize, I don't know the technical terms, but the part of the table leg where it's square and it starts into the round turn portion. He would take a handsaw, kind of like what we've got here, and he would just break the corner fibers with his saw so that any tear out would stop right at that saw mark. So I do it with the skew. So I'm going to take the toe, the pointy part, and I want to have about 1/4 inch wall thickness. Just like that. Right at that edge. And that will hopefully stop any tear out from going past that. Okay? Okay. And I've stopped about 1/8 of an inch shy of that 1/4 inch mark, just to make sure we're good, and I think we are. But I don't want to go any thinner right now. And we'll get into this in a little bit, but this is where my branding part of the demo is going to come in. So I'm going to leave this about 3/8 of an inch thick. We'll turn out all the rest of this. So now that I've gotten a good portion of that turned out, we're going to do the same thing just without the tailstock support. Now for you guys that were here for Tom's demo on the winged box, he talked a lot about, or a little bit about, this tool rest is your no-go line. Don't get your fingers past that. The three-sided bowl won't hurt as much as his 2-foot winged bowl, but it's still gonna hurt. So try not to get your fingers past that. A push cut, I'm using my thumb on the tool rest to brace the bowl gouge, because if I don't, it'll skid on me. It'll skid to my left. So that's kind of a little backstop. And same thing, I'm just making a series of V cuts into the piece of wood. And you may notice when I start, my bowl gouge is, the flute is a little more closed. Not completely closed on the side, maybe open to, closed would be 3 o'clock. I may be open around 2 o'clock or so. And then as I get into the wood and I have enough wood on the bevel, I'm opening up the tool a little bit more to take a little bit more of an aggressive cut. Okay? And as I'm stepping it down, I'm just following the same V's that I made before. Right there. So I'm not bracing it enough with my thumb, and it's kind of skidding on me. Right here is our end grain. So we've got end grain there, side grain this way. That's part of the tough thing about this is your grain is going you've got end grain and side grain, and your two side grains, at least on the way I grabbed it, we've got some going this way, and this is going this way. So you're dealing with a lot of different things. But one of the things with the push cut is it doesn't handle side grain very well. So we'll get to a point where we'll be switching to a different style of bowl gouge called a bottom bowl gouge that does very well coming across this way. So that's why I say right now we're basically just pushing straight in, making those V cuts. Does that help? See how it's grabbing? That's that grain coming in. So as I'm getting closer to my finished thickness, hopefully you can see I've transitioned from pushing straight in to create the V's. now I'm starting to create the curve of the inside a little bit. A little lumpy, but not bad. So I've maintained about the 3/8 wall thickness. And, okay, so let's stop here. So we're going to move on to the second part of the demo, which is the fiery end. And we're going to do some branding. Now, the reason I'll stop here, because you can see on, I'm sure most of you came up and looked at my half-completed piece. And you'll notice on the inside, see the burn marks on the inside. That is burn through from all of this torch work, all of this branding on the outside. Now, I did this intentionally, basically finished the whole inside and outside of the bowl and then branded it so that we could see this burn through that you get. You're using a red hot poker, like this is kind of unavoidable. But what I have found is if you leave your wall thickness a little bit thicker, do all your branding, that will minimize, maybe even eliminate so much burn through. But if it does, we can then go back, finish turn the inside, and slice off all of that staining and hopefully completely eliminate it. If we don't, there are other ways. For example, it's actually kind of hard to see. I had a lot of that on this one. You can see some faint burn through marks on this. So what I did to eliminate that, because unfortunately I had finished the inside. So hopefully you can see right in this area, there's a bunch of little dots. That's what the burn through is, and it's specifically on the end grain. Because remember, wood is just a bundle of straws. So if you put a flame on one end, it's going to come through on the other side. As you're burning that, you can actually see little things of flame and smoke coming out this side. You can also be burning over here, and a couple inches away, see smoke coming through. That's just the tubes of wood fiber. So this is just pitch and resin remover for cleaning your saw blades. This stuff does a fairly decent job at getting some of that staining, because I think, and I'm not a wood scientist, but I think the reason that happens, aside from the end grain, is that the natural resins and things like that are in wood are what are burning, because once that's done, you can feel it's very sticky. So this does a good job at helping to kind of minimize that after it's happened. Sticking a wet rag in there to kind of help keep it cool, it could, yeah. I will give that a try. So a homemade car battery charger branding iron. This is a dangerous tool. As I said to somebody before the class started, there is a reason these are not available at Woodcraft. If you're interested in doing one of these, I highly recommend it, but it is dangerous. Don't come crying to me if you burn your house down. You're on your own. So, that being said, because this was my beginning of quarantine project. We were all stuck at home, and I'm like, I want to do some branding. I got to figure out how to make one of these. There is surprisingly very little information online. I was able to find 2 YouTube videos that were really not really complete. So, because I love all you guys so much, I have written up full detailed instructions, full pictures, how I did the machine, how I make my pen, and tips and tricks and things like that. Full parts list, prices that I paid. My total investment to get to the point where I can do this was about $125. That was purchasing everything. I didn't even have any PVC pipe at home. So that was purchasing everything. A lot of Home Depot, a lot of Amazon, but this is a very doable thing. And then obviously everybody's favorite, Harbor Freight. Less money if you can manage to get a 20% off coupon. So now, the battery chargers are constantly changing. Every couple years, the circuit boards are different, blah, blah, blah. So right now, my instructions are good. Down the road, if they change things, make them a little bit more digital, I don't know, but you might have to modify things. So I'm not an electrician. I have the basic knowledge of electrical stuff. So I'm sure there's somebody in here that is way better than me with electrical stuff. Feel free to educate me better. So my branding iron is just right now set up to do a basket weave, simple basket weave. If you're interested in doing a basket weave pattern, check out Pro Turner Molly Winton. Search for her on YouTube. She has some great videos fully discussing her entire process, and she's a major award-winning wood turner and branding artist. But it's very easy. Now you may be asking yourself, hey Pete, why go to all that trouble? Woodcraft sells wood burners that, 170, 200, whatever bucks.
I was just going to ask that.
Yes. And the reason is power. The commercially available branding irons lack the power to, in a timely fashion, do this level of wood burning. Doing stuff like this is totally in their wheelhouse. Outlines and things like that, words and stuff. But when you want to completely scorch and blacken the surface, you need something with some more power. There probably is some commercially available units that are adequate. But in my experience, it comes down to the amount of time. So to do some sort of pattern like this quantity of burning on, say, a razor tip model, it can do it, but it's going to be literally, the tip is red hot, burn. Wait 5 to 10 seconds, literally, for it to get red hot again, burn. 5 to 10 seconds, burn. That amount is going to take you hours, if not days, to complete. With this bad boy, and you'll see, it is burn, 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 burn. It almost is too quick. So, let's see how it looks. And I'm kind of looking for a nice glow, specifically the two outer coils. I want to make sure that those are kind of getting equally hot. Can you see there? Okay. So, I gotta have readers. Where were we? Can everybody see? And by all means, stretch your legs. I'm gonna be doing this for a little while, so come on up if you want to see up close.
What kind of wire are you pulling?
So this is 20 gauge nichrome wire I got from Amazon. Nichrome wire. And I have a spool of it right here.
How long does the wire last under that temperature?
Is there a farm nearby? So the only downside that I have found to this is it tends to you'll get a little knuckle burn because flames just, right there, it just comes shooting back at you. Just like that. Now, and the other issue that you may have is, believe it or not, I do actually have a pattern on here. If you look at my points, I've kind of tried to do like a parquet kind of step. Other than that, it's all what I call a vertical coil pattern. So as I'm approaching the end, I'm going to switch. And I'm going to come in from this side, right? That was my pattern. Yeah. Come in from this side. Do a couple brands. In one of the YouTube videos that I referenced to understand how to strip this out and make it, the guy demonstrated just strung, I think it was 12 gauge nichrome wire, and then just cranked it all the way up and it blew the wire apart. 12 gauge. There's 6 or 7 inches worth of branding in what, a minute and a half or so plus talking. Little stainless steel brushes, again from Harbor Freight. So once you're done, just like brushing teeth, you just want to get all those ashes out of there. What? Yeah, this is my toothbrush from home, so there's that. All right, now let's do a little bit of work on this one. So just another pro tip, always mark some reference point on your piece. I always mark both sides of the number 1 jaw so that when you inevitably have to put it back in, you can get it lined back up. All right, so let's do, now this is just like I said, a vertical coil pattern. Let's do an actual basket weave on this. Now if you watch the pros that do a basket weave brand, they always start with a row of vertical and end with a row of vertical. It kind of frames everything in and then basket weave in between. So let's try something a little different. And I'm just slowly rotating until my brand is perpendicular to my sides, I guess would be a better way to say that. We'll just kind of fill in one corner. This is probably a lot like sanding for you guys. Smells a little different. Ooh. And every once in a while you get a little squeak. So I have a ventilation fan here. Let's plug that in. It's not bad here, but in my basement studio it does get a little. So I have it so that it's pulling the smoke away. So the thing I like about this is that it allows me to move my brand as fast as my brain is thinking, as opposed to my razor tip model where I'm just constantly waiting. So hopefully you can see, oh, there we go. So I've just outlined my rim, kind of faded it vertical, and then came down this side. So now we'll bring in, the other nice thing is you can sketch and draw all over this, and it will totally burn away with that brand. So I'm just giving myself a reference, a vertical line straight down that corner. So your basket weave, real simple, is 2 vertical, 2 horizontal. And when you make your basket weave brand, you want to make sure you have the correct number of coils so that your vertical is exactly equal to your horizontal when you turn it side by side. That keeps everything nice and uniform. Okay, that's good. And then when you do your next one, you're going to be going opposite the shape that's directly next to it. Is everybody still awake? Thank you, Vanna. Yeah. Okay. So I've just started filling in. I know that tends to get a little bit boring, but can you guys see on there how I'm filling in that basket weave pattern? So I'm just, the more pattern you have, the more spots you can hit with the alternating direction. And you can just get it wider and wider and wider. So what I've chosen to do, like I said, is I came straight down the center with the basket weave and I'm spreading out from there. And my hope is, if I do that to each corner, I can eventually meet somewhere in the middle. Now, it's never going to work out perfectly, and there are tips and tricks to how do you blend it in to get nice uniform basket weaves. Honestly, you can't, because in the beginning, you're probably doing nice, tight little alterations. As you fatigue and things like that, your brands are going to get a little bit lazier and a little bit lazier. So it's a good idea to take breaks, make sure you're comfortable when you're doing this. But if you look at this bowl that I've done a good portion of the circumference, I still have to come down some, you'll find inconsistencies in here. The nature of reducing the size as you're coming down on this curve, naturally the number of brands around the circumference are going to less and less and less. It mathematically just doesn't work out. So you got to kind of watch. This is where you're finishing, you're a couple inches away, you're kind of adjusting your brand. It's like a game to hopefully end on one full brand. Doesn't always work. So, but that's basket weave branding in a nutshell. This was my prototype, but we talked, I think. This was my prototype and it worked. So this is what I've been using since early 2020. And it gets a little scorched at the end. But I can do, like I did this whole thing. This was probably not even 10 minutes to do all of that. And this gets warm, but not hot. So you can just keep going. The machine has the power to just keep going. So the nice thing is, because it uses the mono pickups that you used to have with a stereo system, you can adapt it to most of the commercially available burning pens. So for example, this is a razor tip. This is their skew. You can buy the adapter from Woodcraft. That's this little thing. And make your own plug to use this. And I use this, again, turn the power all the way down. I use this whenever I'm doing any sort of outlining. So whenever I'm outlining shapes, and you can see that tip really stays red hot. It does not lose its heat. That is how I also do lettering on bowls and things like that. So this is how I did the fur on my Greyhound here. Just as though I was using a pencil, just drawing lines. And again, because of the power, you can just keep going and going and going. You will get tired before the machine runs out of power. Like that. I can also switch to the ball stylist. Same setup. If I want to do the stippling pattern like I did on this little guy. Now the ball on the ball stylus is a little bit, because it's thicker metal, takes a little bit more power. Oop. Now, I would finish all of my branding all the way down as far as I want to go, like I've done on my bowl there. Then come back over to the lathe, line up my marks. You know, and unfortunately, I didn't really get any burn through. Probably didn't do enough burning to get that whole area hot enough, so really wasn't anything to turn off. But I'll continue with this and hopefully next month be able to bring it in all completed for you. Now that we've got this cone, this is where I was telling you we need to switch to a bottom bowl gouge, which is just a slightly different grind on your traditional bowl gouge, which allows you to get this coming into the side grain here to turn it a little bit easier. Unfortunately, can't really take very heavy cuts with this bowl gouge, but it does a beautiful job. The finish is spectacular once you're done. So when I get home, maybe even tomorrow, I'll finish all the branding on the outside and then come out here and achieve my finished wall thickness, scraping it and all that kind of good stuff and sanding it, and then hopefully we'll have it finished.
What about that tear on the grain on the very end?
So yes, good question. So what I'm probably going to have to do is I'm probably going to have to do some power sanding because that came out pretty deep. On the cherry one that I did, it came out beautiful. But what you would do if you don't have massive tear out like that, flat sanding that surface, lock your lathe headstock, and that's just a flat surface. Very easy to sand and get that looking nice. And then that really sharpens up those corners. So I will reverse chuck it. With some sort of a cone, whatever I have that matches kind of this shape generally, and then with a soft pad in there. So then that gives me, well, full access to the outside so I can turn my foot however I like to do it. And you guys know I've talked about this in my other demonstrations. I utilize that tenon as my foot when I'm all done. So I don't turn this flat. I turn that into my OG or whatever shape I'm going for. That's typically this shape. So this kind of like curved detail with a little shoulder in there. That's my favorite shape. I really love, this is going to sound weird, but I really love feet. Feet on bowls I really love. So I think that is, that really sets off a piece. When I look at pieces on the table, I'm looking for the members that have actually done some effort in making something for this piece to be lifted on. So the foot of a bowl is really important to me, or a hollow form, whatever. So, okay, so that is three-sided bowl and a little bit on burning and texturing.